Forspoken is a lot more fun than I expected. Thus far, there have only been a few glimpses into combat, while the marketing campaign has, in my opinion, done the game a disservice by focusing on campy dialogue instead of what Forspoken is doing best. Because what's actually here is an RPG light with a very heavy emphasis on big, bombastic combat sequences that have an optional bonus challenge for tryhards like myself in a Devil May Cry-like combat rating system. Forspoken surprised me with this focus on combat, roaming bosses to challenge, and a map filled with objectives to complete. I finished my demo excited to get better ratings in fights, and to see how all this ties into Frey's experiences in her fish out of water story. The majority of this demo was focused around world exploration, controls, and combat. However, the little bit of banter we got between Cuff and Frey did have some insight as to how their dynamic will work. Cuff will give you the details about a person, place, or thing, while Frey continues playing the fish out of water role, asking a plethora of questions. Nothing seemed particularly forced or campy, which you'd think would be oozing out of every corner given how the team was lambasted on social media for their marketing campaign. So I was especially glad to not find any grating filler conversations as the two explored the world. Otherwise, the world we explored was quite interesting. The entirety of the plot focuses around planet Athia, and an event known as the Break that has transformed animals into beasts, the dead into zombies, and introduced magic-bearing Tantas onto the playing field. The latter were sent by a mysterious character known as Prav, who we don't learn much about besides some flavor text in the menus. What we do know is Prav is able to send unjust enforcers and a pitless arbiter mini-boss after Frey. This all took place during one of the 5 missions in our build, all focused on teaching you the game's core mechanics. And that's what the majority of this demo was for. The amount of combat options are a bit staggering at first. Thankfully, the 22 abilities we had access to were split into 2 sets, Frey's magic and Scylla's magic, and you could swap between them easily by pressing left or right on the D-pad. Additionally, to give you more time to plan each attack, you can set your gameplay options to make your ability swaps on the radial interface either slow down time, stop time entirely, or do nothing once you've become accustomed to the system and can knock out some nutty combinations with ease. So we didn't have all 100 plus magical abilities at our disposal, but the 22 abilities we did juggle were varied and interesting. This included 2 surge abilities, aka your super move, 6 main attacks, aka your go-to punchy or shooty moves, and 14 sub or support attacks, aka one-time use magic abilities that enter a cooldown period after use. Frey's magic included 3 main attacks, Burst Shot, Shield Shot, or Scatter Shot, which are typical projectile abilities that send projectiles outward to shoot things from a distance. Of course, all these main abilities can be charged to shoot larger projectiles, but you're also left vulnerable during that time. The secondary attacks are support-based, so you'll use things like Bind to tie up opponents, Leech to summon poison-curing plants, Screen to summon stones around you as a rock shield, Disperse and Implant to create plant turrets to auto-attack, or Prime to lay a magic trap that will blow up should someone step onto it. The Surge ability, Genesis, creates a massive spike of roots from the ground that ensnares and damages anything caught within. Scylla's magic was by far my preferred method of approaching combat. It didn't hurt that most things were vulnerable to it in this build. The 3 main attacks that involve fire are Arc Slice and Blast Slice that give Frey a huge fire lance, or Rage Slice that allows your fiery fist to become the weapon. Even Scylla's sub-abilities are incredibly powerful. Charge send you dive kicking at top speed into an opponent's face, pushing them back and damaging them at the same time. Bombardier does the same, but triggers an explosion that does area of effect damage. And Fire Trap creates a lava bubble to burn away at anything stepping inside of it. There's also less in-your-face options here like Aegis, which I don't know how to say properly, that cancels out an enemy's attack or eliminates defense-reducing spells applied to Frey. And my personal favorite, Crucible, will engulf a circular area in flames and allow Frey to do more attack damage to anything captured within. Combine that with the incredibly powerful, say it with me, Conflagration, which engulfs anything in front of you in a massive wave of fire, and you'll likely be walking away from most encounters victorious. Both Frey's and Scylla's magic also benefit from parkour abilities, offering additional options if airborne. As the parkour elements are separate, you can also use the Spider-Man web zip style ability to get up close and personal should you need to, or simply dodge to the left or right and avoid an attack. And all of this is combined with a combat rating that is constantly judging how well or poorly you've been doing the entire time. I will admit that I became obsessed with figuring out how to improve my score, as that letter D lingered far longer than I liked. With all these abilities, I'd love to see what a Frey S tier combo looks like, hoping it would make even Dante from Devil May Cry blush. In addition to all the combat elements, I was surprised by the amount of gear you can add to Frey, because each item had several stats to bolster your attack, defense, or magic. Those items include cloaks, necklaces, and even what I assume are press-on nails that, yes, you can paint if you choose to do so. Cloaks have stats for attack, defense, and in this build, a purple or red magic rating buff, in addition to 3 random buffs on each piece of gear. Necklaces buff health and defense stats with that same purple or red rating the cloaks had, and seems to focus more on damage buffs. Finally, the nails. This is where your spell buffs are located, and you'll see everything from Frey's spell damage, plus 5% here, or something more fun like killer blows generate a shockwave. With that knowledge, you can start imagining what Frey's going to look like even early on in the game. Enemies are going to be knocked to the ground, electrocuted, generate a shockwave on their death, all while bursting your surge ability, meaning you'll be ready with an ultra strong attack to finish off anything remaining. I can't wait to see what other passive options we'll be able to stat into later on. To put those skills to the test, they've littered the map with plenty to do. There are enemies you can hunt down for XP rewards, treasure chests to unlock new gear, townspeople to save for a mana reward that will upgrade your abilities, monuments to strength that'll give you a stat increase and spawn something interesting to fight, and, oh boy, here's another tough word, Gaiuzal locations to scout that will reward new cloaks. And I think those are just a few of the items I happen to spot with my short amount of time in Forspoken. To find them, you can use Cuff's abilities like scan that you can do by tapping up on the D-pad. Compass is also used by holding up should you want to be directed to a specific location. And if you need some help while you're out there, you can tap down on the D-pad to use a healing consumable, or hold down outside of combat to set up a camp and get some rest, or craft various items like those healing drafts. I ended up using more than I'd like to admit. You can also do this at one of the hideaways that will also allow you to unlock new abilities with the mana you've collected, or craft/upgrade your cloaks, necklaces, and nails. And the parkour abilities aren't just limited to combat either. You can also very quickly get around the map with your standard zip ability, which makes things like climbing up the face of a mountain much easier, or getting to the next point of interest a bit more fun than just walking there. Because I primarily played all of this on performance mode, as I prefer faster frame rate over pretty visuals, I did want to ask what some of the other graphical targets were. The Forspoken team told me that they're targeting a maximum resolution of 2880 by 1620p with a frame rate of 30 FPS for the ray tracing mode, and a maximum resolution of 2560 by 1440p at 60 frames per second for the performance mode. Having had the chance to swap between them both, there's an obvious difference in how the game feels and looks for both, as the demo was so focused on combat, I felt the faster frame rate was the way to go. That said, if visuals are your thing, they've clearly spent a lot of time working to make them the best looking they can be. My biggest worry remains the story, which I didn't experience much of, but from what I have seen, I am intrigued by it. A modern day Chronicles of Narnia with a heavy focus on pulling off bombastic combos? Yeah, I'm 100% in. Forspoken has not done many favors for itself in terms of marketing, but having played it, if all these elements can somehow come together in a cohesive manner, I think we're all in for a treat. I guess we'll find out when the game launches in 2023. For more on all things gaming, keep it right here at IGN.